Hey, what's going on, everybody? And today, in this episode of Car Talk, that's my new podcast. My new podcast title. It's called Car Talk. Okay, because when you live in a city where you spend a huge portion of your time in traffic, you call that car talk, right? So, number one, I want to talk about the tariffs, the Trump tariffs, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and noting that this is an issue that needs a lot of studying and a lot of statistics to get it down right, and a lot of consultations with experts to actually hone this thing down right and make accurate predictions and accurate estimations on this whole tariff thing. That's a lot of research that needs to be done just to be able to make an accurate prediction and conclusion to this whole tariff thing. But with the tariffs, I just want to mention a point that I was thinking about today. Definitely the tariffs will result in higher prices. Okay, so it is true that these tariffs may bring a lot of jobs back to the United States, because the companies will be forced to move the manufacturing operations back to the United States. That is true. And make the supply chain a lot more a lot tighter, meaning more of the supply chain will be in the United States rather than all these different countries, and then bringing in the pieces together and then maybe putting them in a different factory somewhere, and then exporting the car or moving the car or shipping the car to the United States. So that's number one. What that will create is a lot of jobs. Of course, will create a lot of jobs. But also, on the other hand, because the cost of producing these products, the cars, the laptops, the phones in America, because the cost of labor in America and the cost of product production in America is higher, sometimes way higher than China, or way higher than Mexico, or way higher than a lot of the countries that America gets these products from originally, which is why this started in the first place. This is why America started getting these products from all these countries in the first place, is because it was cheaper to get them from these countries rather than make them yourself. That's why you buy stuff from other people, because if I was gonna make it, it was gonna be more expensive. So it's cheaper for me to buy it from someone else and then focus on what I'm good at and then export what I'm good at to that somebody else. And that's a win-win situation, right? That's how people think about it. But then you bring all these manufacturing jobs. Some of them are very low-skilled. It's low-skilled jobs, low-skilled manufacturing, putting stuff together jobs. Back to America, two things, or more than two things, are going to happen. The prices of these products eventually are going to be higher, thus reducing the quality of life of the American citizen by a substantial amount. Because think about the iPhone that used to get made in China, that you were able to buy it for $1,000 because it's made cheaply in China because of all this cheap prices of labor and different operational costs that make producing a product in China a lot cheaper. Now it's going to be produced in America for you're going to pay a lot more money for it. So that's number one. Two, I really don't know if bringing a lot of these low-skilled jobs instead of focusing on the higher or the highest skilled jobs would actually be good for America from two standpoints. Number one, eventually when these low-skilled jobs will be automated to a large extent, that will create a big social wave, right? Because all these people are going to come to depend on these manufacturing jobs and different types of jobs. Many of them will be automated soon. Then when the automation wave hits, American workers are going to be the ones that will get heavily affected by this automation wave, like, so to speak, right? It's not going to be these low-skilled countries that will be hit with that wave. So that's a very big point to understand when it comes to this whole thing with the tariffs and bringing back the jobs and bringing back more of the supply manufacturing chains into America. Whether it's the processing of oil and its derivatives, the light crude that's mostly produced in America versus the heavy crude that is imported from Canada, right? Or whether it's the cars and the car parts and the manufacturing of different products that will be brought back to America, because basically the tariffs will make it more expensive for companies to produce them outside of America than inside of America. So they will be forced to come and then bring them inside of America. But even that claim, so mind you, that even that claim could be disproved if some of these countries, especially China, are able to produce more products than America needs than their need to import products that America produces. Do you understand that? So with China, it can be very, very different than with countries like Canada or Mexico. So very different because of the nature of the products that are included and the nature of the mass of the products that America and the whole world depends on that come out of China. I mean, with Canada and Mexico, I think the tariffs can be somehow manageable. And I would still think that it would cause a devastating effect to the Mexican and the Canadian economy. But I think with China, the case could be made that the American consumer and America as a country can be hurt more than the Chinese economy. Okay, the American economy can take more of it with China. So with China, it can be a little bit of a different issue. But even with that, there has to be a lot of studies to actually hone down what the data sets and the statistics of what can actually happen with this stuff. So this is as far as the tariffs and as far as the different economic changes that we're seeing right now when it comes to President Donald Trump and the changes that he wants to make and he wants to see in the American economy. That's a huge amount of restructuring to the supply chains, the global supply chains, and to the American supply chains and to the North American supply chains. That's a huge amount of restructuring that will happen that can take years, beyond even the term of 4 years that is the term of President Donald Trump. So this is a humongous amount of change, okay? That can possibly take maybe some of it 6-7 years to actually settle down and to be able to be processed by the markets and processed by the American and the North American companies and supply chains. That's the first point. Now, the second point with regards to everything that's going on in the Middle East and the Syrian problems, the Syrian revolution, and now the clashes between the Alawites, the group, the ethno-religious group that used to belong to President Assad, and now the clashes between them and the Sunni militias, or the Sunni basically army now, that controlled Syria and controlled the new countries. I thought that these clashes, it was just a matter of time before these clashes took place, for the simple fact that this part of the world is one of the most sectarian parts of this planet. I mean, people over there fight and they kill each other over being like a sect of a religion. Like, you don't even have to be a different religion. You can be a different sect of a religion, and you'd still get killed or targeted over that. Doesn't even have to be the main sects, right? Like, just between one sect, people can kill each other and wage wars over a derivative of a derivative of a derivative of a specific ideology or a specific religion. And that's how ridiculous this whole thing is. The second thing is also all these different ethnic groups, right? You know, so add to that layer of complexity all these different ethnic groups. Like, you have the Kurds, and then the Turks, and then the Persians, and then the Arabs. And the Arabs are different tribes and they have different alliances. Then you have the North Africans, and then the Berbers more to the west of Africa, and all of these different things. It's just so many different ethnic groups layered with so many different ideologies and sub-ideologies and sub-ideologies. And people are still very connected to these ideologies, and they think it's just basically a matter of life or death. And in that part of the world, pretty much people they form their alliances, and many times based on these ideologies. So you can think of it in terms of, like, if you want to change alliances in that part of the world, you have to change your ideology to form a different alliance with a bunch of people. It's that crazy. And I think that a lot of the sectarian violence is just going to go up and down. But with that being said, you know, the Alawites are like 13% of the country. Their supply lines, whether through Russia or through Iran, the supply lines have been decimated by the Israeli strikes to Iran and their proxies in, you know, Syria and Lebanon and whatnot. So I don't think they're gonna have a lot of power, especially that they're a minority in the country. You know, Alawites are 10 to 13% of the Syrian population. They don't have a lot of power, and I doubt that they're going to be able to pose like a long-term challenge to the new authority of the new Sunni groups that are in control of the country right now. Not to mention the fact that the Sunni Turks and the Sunni Arabs will, in case of any conflict, they will probably support monetarily and even with weapons that new Sunni group to keep it under Sunni control and not have it go back to some kind of a Shia, a Irani control zone, which, you know, I don't think either the Turks or the Arabs would want to see that. So this is as far as the situation in the Middle East. And of course, you know, Israel, they had some things with the Druze people, and I think they let them into some of the areas in Israel or whatever. You know, it's a very inflamed and ethnic and sectarian part of the world, and it's very difficult for sometimes it's very difficult for people to understand these things. But you know, it is what it is. And as far now as the situation in Ukraine, with, you know, America, the Europeans, and the Russians, you know, the Russians and the Ukrainians have been the Russians and the Europeans have been fighting forever, man. I mean, go back in history. The Russian, I mean, so many wars. I mean, and they had so many different ways. They so many different names. You know, the 30 Years' War, the 70 Years' War, the 60 Years' War. Russians and Europeans have been fighting forever. And this has been something that, you know, had always kept Europe under fire. You know, this is since the Soviet Union and after the Soviet Union, and even way before the Soviet Union. People think that this conflict in Europe between the Europeans, what you can call the Western European bloc, and the Russians, this has been going on since back in the day. I mean, go back and look at the Russian-Swedish War, the Russian-French wars, the Russian-English wars, you know, the Russian-German wars. I mean, this has been going on since forever, since these two big groups of the Europeans and the Russians existed, right? They have been fighting these wars forever, right? You're talking about, I mean, in the 1900s, the Germans, you know, the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union and they fought the Russians. You know, way before that, in the 1600s, and the 1500s, and the 1400s, there was so many wars. The 1800s, the big game, you know, between the UK, the British Kingdom, and Russia, trying to cut each other's, you know, supply lines and whatnot. The French and the Russian wars, the French and the Swedish wars before that. So many wars between the Europeans and the Russians. These things did not start today. And I don't think it's going to end anytime soon, because I don't think Russia being defeated or going anywhere anytime soon, and I don't see the Western European nations being defeated or going away anytime soon. Given the nuclear weapons that both of them have in large numbers, and given the military production that both of them have in large numbers, I don't think either group is going away anytime soon. So I think this is going to go on, this kind of like European-Russian Cold War and real war, that's a proxy war, or a direct versus proxy war that's being fought right now in Ukraine. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And if anything, things might get hotter, and they might get more inflamed in the Eastern European scene, given the new attitude of America, which is to pull out a lot of the funding, a lot of the American funding and military help and intelligence help to Ukraine that Ukraine has depended on since the start of the war. So this is a completely new attitude that will basically restructure how everybody approaches this whole thing. You know, the Europeans now are boosting their defense by a humongous amount, up to 800 and even could be more billion euros. The supply chains are shifting more, and they're thinking more about giving these contracts to European companies versus American companies. So now they're talking about maybe replacing all the American companies, like replacing the Javelin with in-law, the British system, replacing the F-16 fighters and different American fighters with the French Rafale and even the Eurofighter Typhoon. They're talking about replacing even Starlink with the European Starlink. I think it was called, maybe if I'm not mistaken, Eurostat or something like that. I'm probably not remembering the name correctly, but they're replacing even so they're not only restructuring the monetary input to spend more money and then buy from American companies. No, they're actually now are looking at replacing the sourcing of the weapons and the weapon systems themselves, and replacing these American companies with European companies, French, British, German, Italian companies that will be producing these systems and producing these the ammunition that Ukraine needs. So that's going to be a huge shift of the defense and the military production that would have this is going to have long-lasting effects even way beyond the war. Okay, so this is not going to stop at the Ukraine. This is going to be restructuring that will have a massive impact way beyond the war in Ukraine. What you're seeing right now, that is a movement that you can say is almost led by France and the UK, but also supported by a lot of other European countries like the Polish, the Germans. France now is talking about how they may extend their nuclear umbrella to other European countries to replace the American umbrella of NATO, because up to that point, America was the one under NATO that, you know, used to protect a lot of these European countries, and even Turkey also had a NATO umbrella, where, you know, the United States, you know, under NATO, but it's actually the United States had nuclear bases stationed across many of these European countries to protect them, initially from the Soviet threat, and after that from the Russian threat. And many of these Eastern and Central and even other Western European countries, and also Turkey. Now that this whole defense ideology is being restructured, we can look at that nuclear umbrella and nuclear defense system and approach being completely changed from an American to a more of a European approach, right? And this is also something that's going to have long-lasting effects on the production chains, on the research and the university education, the nuclear engineering departments. That's going to have a humongous effect on everything from education to research to weapons systems. It's going to restructure the whole nuclear global supply chain as well. So we're looking at all these different things and everything that's happening right now, and I think we're seeing massive effects. And I think that, honestly, a lot of people used to talk about the tariffs and the macro and microeconomic effects of the tariffs globally and even domestically on so many different countries. I think what we're witnessing right now is a very, very crucial and very important case where we can see the impact of these tariffs in real time as an actual experiment on the economy and the performance of the United States, and also on all these different countries and on the globe. So I think this is a very interesting experiment, courtesy of President Donald Trump. So with that being said, until next episode, and until some more interesting stuff happens, I'll see you next time.